Hello everybody, this is The Curious Ear. I'm going to be your host today, Aiden Bryan, and today we have Amara Kennedy, Anita Castile, and Ron Murray. Today we're going to be talking about the We the People National March happening tomorrow on Sunday. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us, Aiden.
So just to get started, to let people know who you are, could you please all give us your organization and your affiliation within that organization?
I'm Anita Castile. I actually work for AIDS Healthcare Foundation. We refer to it as AHF as we move forward through the podcast.
Ron Murray, House of Suits of Lauderdale, where I'm a founder and overall godfather, and Stonewall Columbus from the Board of Trustees president.
And then Amara Kennedy, I also work for AHF, and in the context of the We the People, have been a part of a coalition of 50 plus organizations that's been led by Ebony Crispin, based here in Fort Lauderdale, that has helped to really put all the moving pieces and build this initiative that will be launched with a few thousand folks on tomorrow.
What do you think are some of the bigger issues that have caused this whole protest, this march, to take off and to have so many people join and to, launch all over?
There's, if I could start, there's so many, and I would just reflect to, the last year. All the different, changes, Roe versus Wade. I mean, even yesterday, as far as what the Supreme Court Justice voted on, as far as LGBTQ rights and, affirmative action, books out of schools. We can go on, and I think that what We the People did was, the way that they summed it up is that they actually put a list together of how many different ballot initiative, laws were changed, things like that. And I think that's what really made it visible and made it real for me.
Summing up for me, really, it's not even social justice or even political. It's just really a right to life. I think when we're thinking about people who don't know my life, don't know who I am, making decisions based off of me, whether it's reproductive rights, whether I have the right to get service of space because of my sexuality, whether it's because of where I look or how I talk or how I dress. Those are basic things that are inherent to me because I'm a human, because I'm born in this earth, and those rights are being taken away from me cavalierly, not even considering other people based on somebody's decisions or somebody's opinion or moral codes.
I think twofold for me is that most of my career worked for political leaders, and it's recognizing that those individuals are hired by the people to serve all people. Mm-hmm. And what I also know is that we in America, and we being the larger we, have been socialized that our voice doesn't matter. And what this was such an important moment in history, because I think that's the part, and not that we should get caught up in it, but what's happening tomorrow is a moment in history. Mm-hmm. And it is the people, all the people, a representation of all the people saying, no, our voice does matter. And you're not going to make decisions without it being the decision of the people. And we're watching you, and we're not just sitting back and being passive. So I think it's the essence of our First Amendment right, which is the right for free speech and the right to stand up and to remind these folks, whether it's in Washington or in our state house or in our city halls, you are there to represent all people, not just some people. And the laws that are being spewed out are not representative of the voice of all people.
Yeah, and I think, and if I could just add, it's even though, we're here in Fort Lauderdale to do the march is going on in various cities across, because we may be marching in Florida, but rights are being taken away from people all across, the country, all across the U.S. So just to really emphasize that there are going to be multiple marches going on throughout various states because it's affecting everyone.
And Ron and I talked about something earlier that I think is really critical to this is how do we get to this place that we got to get to today? Like, this can't wait till tomorrow. Is that what happens that impacts you impacts me. So we got to see like it's a ripple effect. So it's kind of like when we start talking about marginalized communities, it's kind of like if they're going to go after women's rights, then black folks better be ready. LGBTQI individuals better be ready. Young people better be ready. Immigrants better be ready, because it's almost like a strategic thing of where do I start that quote unquote might be the easiest, and now okay, we chop that down. Well, we got that one. Then the next one. So this is not a time. It's as my mama says, shifting the M upside down and making it the we. So this is a time that I got to get past anything else and realize that this is about we the people. Because after they go after one, they're going after 2, 3, 4, and we're seeing this happen even as recent as yesterday. And what happened around affirmative action, and getting past that, tearing down of affirmative action is not just about people of color. It's about women, it's about immigrants, because affirmative action is about access and equity. And these are groups that are just disproportionately impacted. So it's knowing that this is systematic. As Anita said, it's not about one state, it's about America and what's happening in our country.
And how do you feel currently about including affirmative action in this? How do you feel about the freedoms that have been taken from just all people recently? How has that impacted you? How has that impacted your families? You don't have to get too personal about it if you don't want to, but I just love to hear like how all of this has been, what thoughts have you been thinking in relation to the current almost like wave of like anti-LGBTQ laws, new Supreme Court mandates, stuff like that.
I think for me, it's fear. It's scary. I remember, so I'm from Columbus, Ohio, and we've had a lot of attacks against LGBT persons in our community. A couple months ago, we had a fundraiser for one of our LGBT youth centers, and Nazis came and protested, and in their protest, they brought their guns and things like that. And it was the first time, I believe, in my lifetime that I had to think about what my ancestors went through. At 48 years old, I never thought that I could draw on the powers and do one of those cultural seances and ask for Malcolm and Martin and Rosa Parks to come and give me your strength. Because in 2023, I thought we were past that. And being an individual that's in the LGBT community, and also a black man, and all these other things, and also a professional black man, an educated black man, all these intersections collide. But what's difficult for me is that when you see me, you just see a black man first, a black skin first. And so that's the first thing that's reactionary to, and so that's where I draw on first. However, I didn't know if I had the fortitude to stand up to those type of things, because I wasn't prepared for that, because our parents did it. My grandparents did it. So I'm riding off the work that they've already done, thinking the work is already done. And so my generation, we kind of thought it was already done, and we're right off those heels, so now we should be taking stuff to another level. What happened was the fight went to a macro level that we wasn't prepared and we wasn't watching. We wasn't watching because we kind of got lackadaisical. If you see what's going around, generations are passing. Our grandparents are slowly passing. We lost Harry Belafonte, who was a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, Blue Phi. And he was one of our biggest advocates in civil rights, historically biggest rights. That generation is dying. Yeah. And then from that generation is my parents' generation, and they're dying. And then it's my generation, and I don't know what the hell we're gonna do. We're not ready. And so, we have these T-shirts that say, "I'm not my grandparents." I wish somebody would. But then we also have to realize that we can't do the reaction that we say we're going to do, because then what's happening to us now, we're getting dragged out of cars. Yeah. So we got police brutality nobody wants to answer to either. So now we're getting taken our rights away from us. We're still getting shot and beaten in the streets by cars, because everything we did in 2020 ain't effective. And now we're marching again for something else. So it looks like systematically we just screwed, and we are feeling overwhelmed, anxiety, trauma, and we don't know where to go. That's what I'm feeling.
So it's been seeing it from a different lens, but it's kind of like, oh wait, the work's not done. like I thought we were past this, and all of a sudden it's happening so quickly that it never feels like you are able to get ahead of the fray, if you will. But one of the things that has really resonated with me is that, when we look at how do we take lessons of the civil rights movement, knowing now that, okay, it's still real, like it's still real in these streets, as they say, but implement some of those lessons. And so it's interesting that, talking to Bernice King and some other folks that are still very actively involved in movement building, is the leaders of the civil rights were marching and protesting for a specific purpose. But there was also behind the scenes organizing that happened. So the march was one piece of it, but it was in tandem with other advocacy things that were going on towards the state government, towards the federal government, or towards that. So it was I forget how Bernice called it. It was called MOP, I think. Mobilizing, organizing, and planning. And so it's putting those pieces together so that as we're doing movement building, and that's one of the things I think has been really interesting about this process of the We the People, that it's been all this in tandem with, even as our CEO was saying yesterday, tomorrow is one piece of an ongoing commitment that we have to make to this mobilization and organizing. Because people can think you just go out there and you march, you get the media cameras out, oh my God, it was 5,000 people out there, it was powerful. That ain't gonna move nobody. So it's gotta be the other pieces of this too, and I think that's what this is all about, is recognizing that these laws didn't change overnight. They feel like this has been a strategy that's been going on.
That's right.
And so we've got to counteract that with a strategy of how to, put a pause and a stop into it, while also looking at, okay, how do we try to get back some of these rights too?
I think if I could just add to the women's right to choose and abortion, that really dialed us all the way back, because you have younger girls that didn't know any better. Because when they came into this world, they had a right to choose, but people had fought for that right. So now all of a sudden that's being taken away. And as I mentor a lot of young girls, that was just what they knew. We had the right to choose, and God dog it, we were there. And knowing people had fought for that, and now to have that just taken away, it's just and I think Amara or said, once they take away from one of us, they're going to start taking away. It's just going to be a ripple effect. Yeah. Next thing, I'm not going to do a website for black people either. Yeah. And then it's going to go on and on and on. And it's just time.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. You bring up conversations about like young girls and their relation to these rights. How do you think the sudden loss of these like staple rights that we've had for long periods of time, how do you think that's affected them? And I guess to start with you, since you have a unique view on it, how do you think young people should start to get active in this fight? Because everybody knows that like the younger generations are, everyone says, oh, Gen Z's, getting out there, Gen Z's gonna save the world. But, a lot of people can feel anxious about even getting started into it. So what do you think, how do you think the sudden loss of rights has affected the youth? And B, how do you think they should get into, doing social justice, political activism, anything in that kind of realm?
I actually think that it's kind of a responsibility on me and others to really encourage the young folks to get involved. I think that I am an advocate of the Divine Nine. I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Even Amara being part of 100 Black Men and mentoring young groups, all of the Divine Nine, 100 Black Men, whoever you may hear, we have younger folks that we mentor. For me, it was around George Floyd, where there were so many protests. I would take young folks out with me. I would talk to them about what's going on. And I think that joining organizations when you're young that are around service just puts you in that whole mindset, puts you in that area. It gives you a whole nother brotherhood, sisterhood to be able to work together, march together, and stand together on it. But everybody does not have that opportunity, number one. And so it's us saying, let me talk to you. One of the things that AHF has, and it's led by one of our other senior managers, Tracy Jones, is a whole advocacy program where we go teach young folks how to advocate for themselves. We give examples of some of the things that we've advocated for as an organization. But I just think we've got to be part of that to support them and educating them and telling them how much things have changed and what a risk it is if we continue to allow things to happen.
I agree. I think for me, I think it's kind of two or three folds. I think one is education. I think that in this fight that we're in, as Amar said, this didn't just start. This plan was put in place long before Obama was put in office. Because I think oftentimes we look at the big picture, but we don't look at the details to make the picture. Meaning we looked at the office here and said, oh, we've got it. We have a black man in office. But we didn't look at as a culture, as a group, as black and brown people, we were never focusing on the local elections. Which really got us was the governor. What really got us was the federal judges. What really got us was those appointed ones, those lifetime appointments. When you get somebody appointed lifetime at 32 years old, that's longer than my life. I'm 50, I'm 50. However, and then when we start allowing things to happen, I think the other piece is that I always tell people this. Someone told me this a long time ago, is that when you are in your 20s, you're young, you get that vibrant energy. You want to protest, you want to march, you want to tear it down. And then as you get older, your responsibilities change, and so then you have more access. You know how to advocate. So when we talk about the civil rights movement in the 60s, you had two different types of people. You had those who went to policy and those who hit the streets. Now, I'm in the age of hitting a policy. I know how to advocate behind in the boardroom. I know how to speak that certain language, and I also know how to take it to the streets if I have to. My job now is to take invigorate and to energize those young people to use your energy. Have those villagers, those young warriors to go out there and say, hey, let me give you the right information, teach you the right skill set, and let you tear the walls down while we advocate over here this side. So when you get my age, you've already prepared the next generation. My job, my generation now is to prepare the policy that's going to impact the next 10 years and prepare you to take over when I'm done, which didn't happen for my generation.
And I think the other part to that is that, and I don't want to speak for Ron, but from my perspective, is we're not talking the literal, but the bigger picture. Because like one of some stuff that we saw in, even most recently in Atlanta, is, and I don't want to be insensitive to the reality, because it's a lot of emotional things that are happening right now, and that's real. But it's how do I put some reality into the movement of dealing with the emotions? Mm-hmm. So burning down buildings, burning police cars, tearing down that's not movement building.
Right.
That's destruction. What is movement building is, Ron, and this goes back to the MOP concept, is the letting the people's voice be heard and the marching is one critical part of it, but it's in tandem with who's looking at these laws, breaking these laws down, and understanding how do we go into an attack perspective of the inequities of these laws. It is, and one of the things that we cannot not address the issue of voting. And people may say, my vote doesn't count. Yes, it does. Mm-hmm. What we don't really, again, working with all these folks that that have been heavy into politics, they're always constantly looking at the numbers. And the reality of it is that most of these folks that come from a conservative voice have won by very small margins. I'll give a perfect example. Just a random thing. I used to work for, most recently, one of the mayors of Atlanta, the first female mayor of Atlanta. And even those of us in the PR were like, yeah, she won by a landslide. She's like, no, I didn't. I won by 200 votes. That means 200 more people got me over the arc. And that's true in the governor's races and in our elected state federal levels. So it really is, that critical point is is that every single person's voice counts in these elections and voting, but that you've got to be an informed voter. What most politicians know is that the electorate gets caught up in sound bites. And one of the favorite things, I know Anita knows, I love Oprah. But one of the things that I love that she said back when Hillary was running for office, and everybody's like, well, I just don't like her. And she was like, she ain't coming over to your house for dinner. You ain't got to like her, but do you love this country? Mm-hmm. And so I use that as, in a joking way, but also in a serious way. They're not trying to be your best friend. But when you look, there's going to be one or two, in every election, there's one of two options. And it's looking at that and saying, who is the best option that represents the voice of most of the people, and who is the best option that can receive a level of accountability? I mean, so I think it's all of that.
But I also think we have to make young folks feel confident.
Agreed.
That their voice matters, that their voice, because I hear so many times, well, it's not going to change anything if I do this. It's not going to make a difference if I do this. And it's up to us to really show them how their voice can matter, give examples of things that have changed over, even if it's in past years, what has changed, because they're discouraged. They're discouraged. Everything is being taken away from them. Nothing is happening, whether it be, still people, police beating black people up, still I can't get this job, still, I'm hearing about these mass shootings, rights overturned. They need to build confidence and need to be encouraged that their voice really makes a difference, and grassroots and whatever it is that they need to hear from us.
I agree, and also thank you. I want to also clarify when I say burn the business down, I don't mean burn the business down. But I want but I'm talking figuratively because I think the other piece is that language is power.
Yeah.
And I learned a long time ago is that those of us in the minority communities and marginalized communities, we don't have the power to control our own language. That comes from mainstream because of academia. And who is controlling mainstream academia is normally people who don't look like us, who are not melanated. And so when you control the language, you control how the culture and how the community moves. So if I decipher the language and I break down that struggle, and thereby breaking down that building of that barrier and translate it into a language you understand, because the biggest thing is, like you said, sound bites. People don't understand what the actual law is because they don't take the time to learn the language of the law. So as long as you're speaking in legalese, we tune it out. I remember a long time, my dad is from New Orleans, and my mom was a nurse. She passed away as a PhD. And we would go to the doctor all the time. And in typical black mama, the doctor talked to my dad had colon cancer. And he was like, okay, sir, we might have to take your colon. Okay, boss. And you in stage 3, okay, boss. You gonna be in chemo, okay, boss. You got any question? No, sir. As soon as we get the car, my mom said, what'd he say? I don't know. Yeah. She said, well, you know what they're gonna do? No. Why didn't you ask? Because you gonna ask that white man nothing. So my mom had to break it down. So she said, they're gonna go in your butt and cut it out. Oh shit. Oh dang. So she had to break it down in a way that he understood it. That's what we have to do with our younger generation. And even some of our older people. I remember when Trump was running, everyone was saying he galvanized the rural areas and the Trump supporters because it was just sound bites. And they just heard. It wasn't just them, it was the blacks too. It was our grandparents, our great-grandparents. Oh, Lord, boy, did you see that they about to do X, Y, Z? And that's not what it said, Grandma. Did you read the other line? No. I know how to hit that button and scroll down. That's where they're getting us at. And so when we're breaking down those strongholds, we're deciphering that language, we have to understand ourselves. And one thing that I've always learned about myself is that once I explain it to you, it's mine. So when I was in school, the reason I was so successful in school, because once I had a conversation dialogue about it, I owned it. So once I defined it myself, it becomes mine. So that's what I always do with my young people around me. Those that I mentor, that we talk about what these laws is. We haven't even hit on yet about them saying that the college, the tuition reimbursement. That's crazy. And then I saw something today, and it said that one guy would say, well, if you can't afford to go to college, trade school is free.
Right.
Houseway.
Right.
But there's a lot that's happening. Again, we didn't think we would be here. We thought it was done. Yeah. We're almost back in Jim Crow again.
But I think it's also too, though, is we have taught the younger generation that I call it the American Idol syndrome. Nobody becomes a star overnight.
No.
And and this reality is so that to think, okay, well, I marched and I did this, so tomorrow the laws are going to change. And that's the systematic planning. And I think the other part of it is keeping them encouraged to the duration.
Right.
Because they're used to, when I push this button on this little box, I get my response.
Right.
As opposed to, you got to be in it. And that's what is very encouraging to see the organizations like Why We March and some of these that were led by young people that are continuing the work. You know.
Well, I have to say, all of that was just really beautifully said. I know it might sound kind of trite, me gushing about it, but all of you are just so knowledgeable in what you do. And I'm so happy you all came on here today. In like a short couple of words, what is one thing you would want to get out to any kind of people to inspire them to go and do their best to try and change the world?
I would say be educated on whatever it is you're passionate about. You know the history around it, and then educate others to make sure that you're bringing others with you on that path. Whatever it is that you're passionate about, get out there, use your voice. Tell others about it, but educate yourself so that when you're challenged on whatever it is that's going to come up, you can go head to head to head to head. And don't give up because, like Amar said, you can't push the button and everything's going to change. It takes time. But think about, if for young folks, think about it, and I didn't think about this when I was younger, but you're also fighting for your legacy, for your kids, for your brothers and sisters that are younger. You're fighting for your friends, for everyone else. So I would just say, find something you're really passionate about it, get educated around it, and then keep moving. Don't stop.
My mantra for the last 3 months has been transformation versus performative. Understanding that, like Amar said, when we are marching and when we are posting hashtags and we are on our TikToks and Wick Walks and what the young people do, and when we're posting these things here, it's almost performative because it's only that instant. It becomes, oh, now I have all these likes. The transformation piece of it is the patience of it. There has to be a space for grace to happen. They didn't take it away overnight, and it's not going to change overnight. Right. But the transformation piece of it, you think about a butterfly and a caterpillar. The caterpillar takes time for it to become a cocoon. But once it gets too hard with the butterfly emerges out of the cocoon, when the birds try to eat it, the little kids try to pick its wings, when it gets too hard, it can't roll its wings back up and go back into the cocoon. It has to stay and either flutter away or fight or figure out how it survives. That's the transformation we're looking for. The formative measures is that instant gratification. It's that instant pat on your back. You can keep that. Because the fight still has to go on after those likes are gone and you on to your next viral moment. We're not looking for a viral moment. We're looking for a transformational moment that's going to change our lives and next generations to come.
Bring us home. Bring us home, Amar.
For me, there's a quote, and people who are in my life know that this quote resonates with me, and it's from Dr. King. And it simply says, our lives begin to end the moment we are silent about things that matter. And when I saw this hat, it was a statement that just was like the pow, and that's we the people meets everybody. So what I'd say is all of this, but remembering that it's not me, it's we. And that if not now, then when? And if not us, then who? And that the who is recognizing that if I truly say that you are my brothers, I am my brother's keeper, I am my sister's keeper, then that's without any judgment around who my sister is and who my brother is. And that those conservative voices are understanding that when I take away democracy, it's not just democracy for blacks, it's not just democracy for the LGBT community, that it's ending democracy for all. So we have to counter that with we the people means everybody.
I knew he would bring it home for us. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming and giving a piece of your mind to us. And I just want to say you guys did a really great job. So thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having
Thank you
us.
for
Thank you
having
for
us.
having us.